And speak with Ammar Waqqaf. He's the founder and director of Gnosos, a think tank that can bring us the Syrian government perspective. Ammar, thank you for joining us. Before I get to the U.S. angle on this story, I'd like to get your take on this round of negotiations in Geneva. No major breakthroughs in past talks there. So will this round really be any different?
Well, what's happening now, there are quite a few people who are of the view that the real round of talks and the real negotiations and the parties that the UN is trying to put together on the same table are not the Syrian government versus the opposition, but the opposition factions themselves. What's happening is that the opposition team that has and the factions that have gathered in or had gathered in Riyadh in December 2015 were gathered on the basis of the Geneva I communique, which stipulates a transitional body with a full executive powers, which would mean, according to their understanding or interpretation, that President Assad must go. Now, there are other factions who would like to see a change in the Syrian government, but who are not adamant that President Assad must go. And we have to take into consideration also that since the Russian intervention in Syria, this whole notion of the full transitional body has really faded after the Vienna process and the American-Russian approach. So now the issue is that it's that the factions who stem from the Riyadh conference, the higher negotiating committee, the Syrian coalition, and so on, are trying to exclude anyone or any opposition faction who do not approve of this Geneva I communique agenda. And this has been the major obstacle so far. Will this lead, or would these negotiations or round of talks lead to any breakthrough with the Syrian government? We don't think so. We think that at least if the entire opposition spectrum can unite behind a less theoretical and more practical idea of let's try to bring an end to this conflict and let's think more positively of President Assad staying in power, then probably a breakthrough can take place. Otherwise, we would have to wait until other rounds of talks, unfortunately.
Ammar, now let me move on to the U.S. The geopolitical landscape has certainly changed since UN talks in Geneva 10 months ago. U.S., for one, as we've been hearing from our correspondents, not at the table. Will this mean more negotiations or more progress in these negotiations? Because certainly when U.S. was involved, it seems not a whole lot got done.
Well, we don't think that would affect either positively or negatively or have any effect on the talks themselves. The United States now seems to be in a soul-searching mode. It seems that President Trump, from a business point of view, has taken the view that whatever the United States has done in the past is a sunk cost, i.e. they've spent resources and time on something that is not going to flourish or it's not going to bring any end product. So they need to drop that and think afresh in a different strategy that could probably bring some results and increase American geopolitical influence in the region rather than the decline it has witnessed recently. And now they are shuffling options, in between options. Do they stick with the Kurds and what they call Free Syrian Army or moderate factions? Do they go with the Turkish plan to go into Raqqa, or do they cooperate more closely with Russia, Syria and Iran in order to defeat Daesh, having identified Daesh or ISIS as the primary target? Today there has been a very significant development in which the Iraqi force airplanes have struck ISIS, Daesh targets inside Syria. And we believe that this development means that the Iraqis are sending the signal to the Americans that they are willing to form this sort of coalition between or join the coalition between Tehran, Damascus and Moscow, to include now Baghdad. And we think this is to tell the Americans that this is probably a more reliable faction to defeat ISIS than the Turkish route, to go through the Kurdish areas in northern Syria in a corridor towards Raqqa and Senator McCain has visited Kobani, Ain al-Arab in order to ensure that. So we think this is what's happening at the moment.
Clearly a lot of players in this very complicated conflict. We certainly appreciated you being on the program with us. Ammar Waqqaf with Gnosos. Thank you.